have the best people in the world, and we protect the most important city in the world, and that gives us a lot of challenges.
The DC Fire and EMS Department is a very unique organization. It is an agency that, it protects a large amount of people, but it also protects one of the most important cities in the United States, or if not the world.
Not only are we protecting Congress and the President and the Senate, but we're also protecting the residents, and we're protecting the visitors. And Washington, D.C. gets an enormous amount of tourist activity in the city, so we're responsible for them as well.
We've got every embassy you can think of here, people supporting those embassies that we're interacting with, and that somehow reflects within our rank and file.
We have to learn to deal with embassies. They're foreign countries on our soil. We just don't have the right to barge in there. We have to have permission. That gets complicated when an embassy that may not be friendly to us is on fire and they don't want us looking at their documents, and we've had those types of situations.
If you look at us, we're probably one of the most diverse organizations you're going to find in this country. I believe our ethnic breakdown is very close to 50-50. I believe we have per capita the highest female population in the nation. And with that comes a multitude of backgrounds, comes a multitude of ideas, comes a multitude of ways of looking at things.
It's a brotherhood and a sisterhood. They're amazing people who come to work every day to serve the residents of the District of Columbia. The opportunity to be able to serve my community means so much to me.
People of our department are really a collective from all of society. Men and women from all different backgrounds, all different ages, all different parts of the country, but we're all really here for that common purpose of serving the district.
Working here, working in the department, working in Washington, D.C. it's very rewarding. And for me, growing up in Washington, D.C., it even made it a more of a rewarding experience because I was able to serve the community that I grew up in.
Working for Washington, D.C. Fire and EMS is a dream job for anyone that's got into the fire service to do protection of life, property. To be right there in the seat of the United States government is pretty special.
It is the nation's capital. That's what's the most special thing about protecting it.
So every day you have a chance to make or be a part of a little bit of history. You never know.
When my dad came onto the fire department in 1956, I believe just before that, that's when the department was integrated. So even though it's Washington, D.C. and we're known as Chocolate City, it wasn't always easy for African American men here on this job. There was a lot that they had to endure. And I'm sure it could have been even worse in other jurisdictions. But my father was able to navigate that space and ascend to the rank of Deputy Fire Chief, which encourages me because there were a lot of barriers set for him. Even though this is a brotherhood and people taught him, white men taught him how to do this job, there still were a lot of barriers, there's still a lot of obstacles set for him. It was 20 years before he was even able to make a rank. There was things in place that didn't allow him to promote as soon. But for somebody to stick in there and to hang in there, that really encourages me and lets me know that there's a place for African Americans in the fire service, even though we only make up 8% of the fire service.
The history is absolutely important to everything we do. It's absolutely imperative that everybody knows the good and the bad history of our department, right? We've had horrible things that we've done in our history in the department that we obviously have to know about and teach about so that we learn from those mistakes or learn from those shortcomings.
We are diverse, right? We have to reflect the communities that we serve, right? So we have to have a diverse workforce. And the only way to do that is to have some latitude with our recruitment and hiring, which is what we're doing now.
The greatest thing that I've seen is the increased diversity committees. I've seen this through the local as well as with the department hierarchy. Allowing a platform for people to come in and talk about the difficulties that our department has had in reference to diversity.
History is really what we use as a driving force to train a lot of our members, right? Whether it be a significant incident, an injury, a line of duty death, and then even firehouse life and culture, right? You know, not everybody that works on the job today would have been accepted 2 or 3 decades ago. So, you know, we have to talk about that. We have to talk about the struggles people went through, the things that people had to overcome, and why it's important that, you know, we as an organization realize what good and bad has happened over the years. So history is absolutely important to everybody on the job.
With any history, there are going to be some challenges. There are going to be some things that when you look back and reflect back on, you see some things that you could do differently. And hopefully, when you have that self-reflection and you revisit those things in the past, you can make what you're working toward better in the future. So you don't want to repeat the same mistakes that you've done previously, and hopefully you move past those, right? Every organization, every publication has to be transformed or reformed. It's no different.
Diversity is not just the race. Diversity is dealing with the inclusion of female firefighters coming into the job. The lack of females wanting to promote through this career and encouraging that. So I'm very appreciative of that diverse change.
It's a gradual slope progress and process, and they have hired more women. They've promoted more women. I have found my voice within the department because it's male dominated. So in order for me to be heard, I had to speak up. So, and to assert my position. So I had to do that over the years. So the department has really helped everyone do that. You have to have a voice and you have to stand up for what is right.
The culture within DC Fire Department is very traditional, and over the course of the last 2 decades since I've been here, there's been a shift in the mindset of that culture to work towards a safer today and a safer tomorrow. We've learned from past experiences, we've learned from those that have come before us. I believe that the department as a whole has been committed to changing that culture, changing that mindset.
The culture of it all for me started the day I was born, but for some people, because it's kind of in the blood, but some people it does start day one at the school. And if you can get people on board and believing in what we do and relating to them, talking to them about the history of the job and also the culture of the job and how we kind of act and react, it gets them started a lot better than if you don't.
The DC Fire Department is known for being still one of a very traditional fire departments, a very aggressive fire department. Really holds up the standard of a culture of brotherhood, culture of training, being the best of the best, and no matter what, always going out of your way to continue learning, continue self-development, and continue self-improvement.
Our job really is to solve problems. And when you're doing that problem solving, it really takes a lot of different input to really get to the best solution. You know, a lot of times we find if, you know, we've been doing something the same way, you know, obviously the department has a lot of history, but sometimes we do things the same way over and over again just because that's the way it's always been done. And that might not always be the right way.
And we try to learn from the mistakes that happen. We also have improved a lot of operations. We've improved a lot on communication. We've improved a lot on just apparatus and the gear that we wear. And all of that came as a result of learning from the historical values of those type of incidents.
I believe in the adage that those who don't remember their history are doomed to repeat it. We see that in the world and we see it here. I've always been a reader, and learning about things has helped shape my worldview, and learning about our department has helped me as the leader of the department understand and make decisions about the future of the department.
If you're not communicating, you're not going to get the job done. And that's how we save lives, by communication.
I think one of the biggest things in modern day, particularly coming out of the pandemic, is people started talking via text, talking via unconventional ways instead of having those interpersonal skills. And I think in our department, we're lucky enough to have good firehouse demeanor or good conventional conversations, which require people to have those interpersonal skills.
Back in the day when my dad was a firefighter, you couldn't even speak to the chief, let alone look at him, right? There wasn't that sense of communication. there was a distance. You knew that you were at the bottom of the barrel and the chief was at the top.
The lieutenant was in charge. The chief was in charge. The captain was in charge. They tell you to do something, you did it. Simple as that. You didn't question these officers. They were God. The captain was God. The captain was in charge of the house. It was as simple as that. You didn't ask a question. You tell you to do something, you went and did it. Simple as that. Paramilitary organization.
I think times have changed in the sense that while there still is a hierarchy, there still is a rank and file, if you will, and I think it is good that I can have a conversation with a Chief Kelleher or a Chief Donnelly. I still want to be respectful of the rank and file. I don't go over my sergeant or over my lieutenant, but it's good as man to man that we can have an understanding and come to an agreement if we have our differences, or if I can just even knock on his door and say, hey, Chief, can I pull you to the side? I want some insight about something.
I think we still have a pretty formal chain of command, but I think everybody's heard and their input is valued.
We've been very big on learning from mistakes, both at the firehouse level and on the street. In addition to that, I think that when you're talking about the bigger picture, there is an emphasis on getting everybody that's involved or every stakeholder involved to participate, right? Whether it's verbally on a committee, whether it's at a firehouse visit, during an incident, after an incident. There's a lot of lines of communication now that maybe we didn't have in the past, and I think we're progressing to a place where it's getting better.
I'm not sure I'm any more approachable than any other chief. I'm not sure my staff is, but I do think they try. And I can tell you from speaking to graduation classes and our officer program, they're not afraid to ask me questions. And that's a good thing.
Asking questions sometimes, generally in society, is to get a better understanding. The way that it's perceived sometimes when it comes across, or the way that it's presented, could make it seem as though someone is questioning someone's decision making when in fact they're just looking for clarity.
Our job really is to solve problems, right? And when you're doing that problem solving, it really takes a lot of different input to really get to the best solution. A lot of times we find if we've been doing something the same way, obviously the department has a lot of history, but sometimes we do things the same way over and over again just because that's the way it's always been done. And that might not always be the right way. So being able to incorporate those different ideas and those different perspectives, I think helps get us to the best outcome.
This department I don't think is hidden under the rocks when it comes to their line of duty deaths. I think we've we learn our lessons and we do our best to take those lessons and translate them into practical change.
A lot of what we do to remember our fallen firefighters is it's just tradition based, and some of those traditions have actually begun since I came on the job.
With every line of duty death, there's a lesson to be taken out of that, right? And it might be that somebody fell off a horse doing something over 100 years ago, right? But there's a lesson there in every one of those instances that can be applied to today.
Each one of those members that died in the line of duty is absolutely considered a legend. And the reason they're considered such is because of how they passed. The legendary part comes from the lessons learned, right? What happened to them that made that occurrence happen? Where were they when they died, right? How did they die? Exactly how long did they have on the job? How much experience did they have before they were killed in the line of duty, right? There's all these things we can take from that story, if you will, right, and talk about them. It's really how we teach the younger people, right, that the legend of members that have passed in the line of duty will always live on because we're always going to continue to mention their name.
We don't want to see any firefighter die in vain. And if we don't continue to honor and remember those who have gone before us, making the ultimate sacrifice, then their sacrifice was for nothing. It's important that we continue to engage with their families, with their kids if they had them, with their spouses, to let them know that we are still there. And the fire service preaches and talks about family, and family never forgets when there's a loss. You continue to support those in your family.
I believe that the fire department has taken steps into not just remembering my husband, but to remember the other fallen firefighters as well. They get a lot of us involved in a lot of the events and I believe they have taken a lot of steps to remember our family members, our firefighters. You know, that's one thing that I definitely am very, very appreciative of, is the steps that they've taken to get our families involved.
They are a class act group of people. The sisters and brothers of the fire department, they're family, and they are forever ingrained into our family, and we're forever grateful for them. They always remember and honor my dad to the utmost. When I did the crusade to have the station named after him, they went above and beyond my expectations of trying to keep his legacy alive. And they've done so much to honor him and other fallen firefighters before him and after him. And I just think it's a beautiful thing. He used to say, fighting fires and saving lives is what I do best. But to me, he was a father, which is what he did best.
Keeping the connection with those families, letting them know that the department is always there with you, is a very important part of the culture.
It is making sure that those things that we have the ability to make impact, the things that we have the ability to change, that we are constantly, in a steady and deliberate way, working to make progress. Because none of those reports that we're looking at, or none of those previous line of duty deaths, none of those are complete, right? We're never done. We can never do enough training, right? And so those are the things that we continue to look at.
There was two right before I came on. I had moved down into this area. I was from northeast Maryland. I knew I wanted to be on the fire department, so I moved down and I lived in a firehouse right outside the city in Hyattsville. And while I was living there, with Sergeant Carter's death, and then we also had the Cherry Road fire where 2 firefighters were killed. Those 2 incidents kind of resonated with me, and they were also, the recommendations built off that was to hire more people, and I got hired because of that. I know the department changed quite a bit following those line of duty deaths. So, and we still revisit those. We still teach the lessons from both of those incidents.
Every incident that we respond to, there's always going to be a mistake made, right? We're never going to attain perfection. But the thing that is going to happen is that we're going to be able to learn from even the smallest of incidents or smallest of occurrences even inside the firehouse. If you're talking about, you know, a significant injury to one of our members, there's a lot of things to be learned from there. A lot of things that happen on our job are preventable. If not preventable, they're at least predictable depending on what we're going to. And as far as our line of duty deaths, there's a whole lot of things there historically that our members have to know, right? It wasn't always a line of duty death attributed to a glorious moment of fighting a fire. We have several vehicular accidents, even during the horse-drawn era. We have a lot of incidents that occurred from illness, medical in nature. And of course, we did have things that occurred during collapses, catastrophic events such as flashovers. There are incidents that the fire service in general has learned from, especially since the Cherry Road fire that happened in the late 1990s.
If every fire department in the country tried to sit down and map out the 16 safety initiatives, we'd be failing and we'd be doing a lot of different things and wasting a lot of effort. Somebody's gone and done that. And because of that, we can take it and say, this is how we're going to make people safer. We all know we want to be safe. We don't always know the way to get there. The 16 safety initiatives, NFPA 1500, these are standards that help us get there. In particular, the safety initiatives give us like concrete examples. And I really appreciate that. As a leader, we use those initiatives in our promotion process for battalion chief and deputy chief.
There's a last alarm bell here at the training academy, and there is a roll of honor book that we have outlining all of the line of duty deaths that we've experienced as a department. And the recruits and cadets who are working the day that we remember one of those line of duty deaths on the anniversary of their death, they will ring the bell and read the name and the date of that fallen firefighter. Chief Kelleher has done a remarkable job at the Training Academy getting the line of duty deaths and the photos of the members that we've lost on the wall here.
On the anniversary of every line of duty death in the history of this department, I put it on social media. On this day, and today, in fact, if you look at our Twitter, you know, on May 25th, 1930, Captain Harry Swan, Engine Company 12, died in the line of duty when he fell down an elevator shaft at a fire in Northeast. Never forget. I do that for every line of duty death that has taken place in the history of this department. And that's a reminder to the citizens and to our firefighters of those sacrifices.
There is no fallen firefighter memorial in DC. It doesn't exist. There is no place here in the nation's capital that you can go to pay your respects for the 101 firefighters that we know of who have died in the line of duty serving this city.
Line of duty death that had the greatest impact on me was James McCrae. James McCrae died about 15 years ago, and his cousin died about 7 years ago now of a heart attack on the job. James, because I knew him, we never worked together in the same firehouse, but we often found ourselves on the fire ground together. He was only, I'm gonna say 35 or so when he passed away, and heart attacks shouldn't happen to 35-year-olds. And I was a young person on the job at the time, and it just completely made me change everything that I thought I knew about cardiovascular health based on watching that play out. The unfortunate thing is, since he's passed, we've had 2 others die from the exact same thing, one being his cousin.
Long ago, the days of us having one set of gear, throwing it in the back of your car, and thinking that you just have a piece of conventional wood that had burned onto the side of your gear. Now we're dealing with very dynamic and robust chemicals. When it burns, that attaches a part of it to your gear. And thus, if you don't clean it off, you're going to attach it to yourself. But not just yourself, you also could be attaching it to your children, to your brothers and sisters on the job.
Your gear being dirty is cool. That still exists, but it's our job to, again, change that mindset, right, and make that pivot on that mindset. So, yeah, when we see that, we're like, nah, we need to have your PPE cleaned at least twice per year. And after every fire ground, we're having post-fire decon to make sure, because we're not living in the past anymore, right? So you still have to reinforce where you're trying to go. That hasn't changed. We're trying to change attitudes and behaviors, and that doesn't change overnight. So that culture is still there. It's just not as pervasive as it was, and we are reinforcing what the expectation is now.
I did all that. I was in the dirtiest, nastiest turnout gear you could have, right? And I took pride in that. I think all of us did during that period of time, right? That was the way we lived. That has a meaning to people. And so the challenge is to change.
You know, there's the older guys, you know, we never had to do that, you know, it's this, you know, salty helmets were a sign of pride, and you know, you try to explain to people, you know, you're killing yourself. There's no need to do that, but eventually change happens. It has to happen.
We can sometimes be our own worst enemy in trying to buy into these things, and it's just nothing more than sometimes having something to complain about. Our agency has, you know, mandatory gear cleaning twice a year. You know, we have 2 sets of gear. A lot of firehouses now have wash machines in them. We have them at the training school. We can take our PPE and get it cleaned. We had a young, healthy firefighter the other day who had a heart attack running a box alarm. Seeing members die of cancer from the job, seeing members suffer from cancer and the horrific treatments that they're having to go through just fighting to survive. There's ways that we can prevent that, and I think both DC Fire and EMS as well as Local 36 have really tried implementing positive changes to try to prevent senseless illnesses or deaths.
We are athletes when we're out here. We're doing strenuous work, and we have to make sure that our bodies are prepared for that. You know, the fire ground is where we are having these line of duty deaths, and I believe heart attacks is probably the #1 reason for that. So we can't minimize that, and we can't be dismissive of it, right? We're so focused sometimes on tactics, but what's the tactic for that, right? Which is just better overall health.
It doesn't make any sense to keep doing the same exact practices that we've been doing for as long as we've been doing, when the end result is we're having silent killers affecting our membership, myself included. We have a strong background of members who retire and then subsequently don't get to enjoy the fruits of their retirement and their labor.
Five years ago, almost 6 years ago, I started an organization called Food on the Stove. And we provide tools and resources to help firefighters live a healthier lifestyle through enhanced nutrition and exercise. So it started by using what I had in my own hand. I worked overtime. I asked my wife, I said, you know, baby, I think God has called me to, to serve firefighters. I said, do you mind if I take my overtime money and buy some meals for the firehouse? And I took it, she agreed, and I took it to a firehouse that wasn't my own. And in the fire service, that can be a little bit tricky because they didn't know if I was trying to poison them or if I was really trying to help them. I wasn't assigned to that firehouse, so it was a little bit different. So they asked me, it was like, why are you bringing us food? And I said, well, I want you to eat healthier. So I dropped those meals off, and my prayer was that God would make this self-sustainable, that I wouldn't have to keep taking money out of my own home and feeding firefighters, but that the community will begin to serve those who serve us. And since that day, I haven't taken a dollar out of my pocket. We've been funded by Giant, we've been funded by United Healthcare, Verizon, Host Hotels, and Amazon. We recently developed an app that allows firehouses to order our meal boxes, and we deliver them directly to the firehouse to put healthier meals on firehouse tables.
The fire service has to attack the big three. The big three are what I focus all of my division, the health and safety division's efforts on. Those big three are cardiac, cancer, and mental health. We spent a lot of time today talking about cardiac and about cancer, but mental health is the third big thing there. For me, it's personal. Both my father and my sister committed suicide. I've seen multiple people in the job that have struggled with mental health issues, and it is now my responsibility leading the health and safety division. We have put many things in place for our people, but there's still so much more work to do. I really think that whole culture, that whole mind shift of suck it up and deal with it just needs to be abolished. In the same way we abolished not going out of service for a shower after a fire, we need to abolish that, right? Because the true reality is mental health is the one thing that none of us can see, but all of us can feel. So if you're feeling something, say something, please.
I think for a long time there was a lot of stigmas. A lot of people didn't want to be seen as somebody that couldn't handle the pressures or the incidents, and people want to be tough. And I think that has been a shift in our culture for the better, where asking for help, being vulnerable, I think is almost respected. And people see that and they can understand how important that is.
It's definitely more accepted today. We have an amazing peer support team here. It's led by Local 36. It's partnered with management and our other union, Local 3721. And together they go out and have made it okay to talk about problems.
We're proactive with any type of traumatic call. I think the battalion chiefs and the EMS supervisors and the deputy chief are proactive now to call in peer support just to get them at the firehouse when the crews return. And then also through training, so that we're training all the other members or the membership to kind of recognize signs and symptoms.
The support and love has been continual. And even when I was going through my depression back after the incident, and really nobody knew about it except for my wife, but the support was still there. They would still reach out here and there just to say, how things going, or you look well, or praying for you. And I'm still receiving that type of support.
Firefighters, we don't want to talk to somebody that's not going to understand what we're going through. We don't want to talk to somebody that we think is going to get us in trouble, or is going to take us out of our position. And I think that the peer support team really offers a great alternative, where it's somebody that can help get resources. It's somebody that understands the specific issues that we're going through. And I think that's been a great program. I think there's a lot of other things that have evolved from our clinic and from the IAF has resources, but really identifying and us understanding now how much that mental health aspect is a real thing, and how impactful it can be on people, and just how different people can view the same incident in so many different ways, and making it okay to ask for help.
We have shown that it's been more effective. People are more willing to reach out. We're reaching more people through that. The fire service can sometimes be a closed-knit community, and we'd much rather lean on someone that's kind of been through it before.
The technology we're investing in today is not only serving our members and helping our members save lives today, but planning for the future.
We never know what struggles somebody is going through. So I think that if we can intervene in those mental health issues early on, we can save the lives of those members and get them the help that they need.
Never forget the individual. Never forget what they have done. Never forget the sacrifice that they have made. Never forget that they had a purpose, and their purpose was to serve others, to serve the community. Never forget that they have families. Never forget that they are humans. Never forget that they loved and enjoyed serving the communities.
Never forget means ensuring that we remember those who have made the ultimate sacrifice and their families, that they died for something worthwhile. If we forget, if we just let these things slip into history and we don't talk about them or remember them, then those members were lost in vain.
Don't forget who came before you, because they're the ones that laid the path that you're going to follow now in this career.
We have to remember both the good and the bad of the past so that we don't say at some point in the future, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was dangerous, or why are we redoing the same thing over and over again and getting the same results?
Every line of duty death has a lesson that can be applied today, right? And part of that never forgetting is making sure that we can understand those lessons.
When people leave their families and come to the firehouse for 24 hours and put their lives on the line, that's sacrifice. It starts there.
You are going to participate in the history of this nation on this job. I guarantee you, in your career, you will respond to the Capitol. You will walk through places in the Capitol nobody goes, and you will go into the White House in all likelihood and do the same thing on some sort of response over the course of your career. That doesn't even touch the Smithsonian and all those museums, amazing works of art, cathedrals. But on top of all that, we still take care of grandma, you know? We still take care of a sick baby. We still take care of a homeless person. That's pretty amazing.
I started riding fire trucks in 1969. So I got a couple years under my belt to see how this thing went. And it's been a hell of a ride.
I have learned a lot about an organization. I've learned a lot about friendship. I've learned a lot about community service. I've learned about myself as well. Pushed myself to limits that I didn't think were possible for me.
The DC Fire and EMS Department is the absolute best fire department in the country. That's what I want them to believe when they leave my firehouse.
Fire and EMS is always going to be committed to the history and tradition of this city, of this department, but we're never going to stop looking for a better way to do it, a better way to deliver that service, and a better way to protect our members. We're going to learn from the past in order to have a better tomorrow, and everybody's voice matters.